Greetings, YouTube. The title of my video is not referring to this kind of a box. It's referring to solitary confinement. The Center for Investigative Reporting conducted a year-long investigation to the problem of teens held in solitary confinement and chronicled what it found in a short documentary called Alone. Almost half of all teens in New York City's Riker Island suffer from some form of mental illness, and the experience of solitary confinement exacerbates these problems. There's not much inside the box. Cinder block walls rise up and close in. There's a bunk, a sink, a toilet, and a metal door with a small mesh window. Food comes through a slot. Sometimes mice and roaches scamper through. Teenagers kept in the box sometimes hallucinate and throw fits. They splash urine around or smear their blood and feces on the walls. The concrete room gets so hot in the summertime that the floor and walls sweat. Now, before people start cheering in, people who break crimes deserve to do their time, many of these teens have not been found guilty of anything. They're just being held. And they talk about one particular teen, one Izzy Nazario, a teen who spent more than 300 days in solitary confinement at Rikers Island. That's 23 hours a day in a 6 by 8 foot cell. That's smaller than my bathroom. 6 by 8 foot, 23 hours a day. And many of these teens have been not found guilty of anything. Now, I should like to point out that the United Nations Human Rights Committee has determined that more than 15 consecutive days in solitary confinement is considered torture and would be a violation of the Geneva Convention. So there you have it, folks. The United States tortures children, which isn't a shock. We torture people who aren't guilty of crimes that are adults. So why shouldn't we torture teens? Just get them used to the idea, because they're just going to be thrown into the machine and ground up and spit out when it's convenient. I had a conversation yesterday, or an exchange, I should say. It's not really a conversation. And it started on a discussion of a online playthrough for a video game. Which did you think would be relatively innocuous? But it dealt with deciding whether someone had been guilty of something. Was a group of people killed by a military organization more of an atrocity than one of the survivors of that atrocity hunting down and killing civilians? And I said that one is a war atrocity and people should be brought to justice, and the other is a serial killer. So you have to stop the serial killer. Now, in our world, we would arrest them and charge him, try him, and put him in prison. In this particular game, the most logical conclusion to do was to kill them. But they had to be stopped because they were a serial killer, even though it was fictional. And in that very simple exchange I had with other people, the incredible hatred of the very concepts of morality, that you have to assert control, that you have to make sure everything is under control, that morality can be thrown by the wayside so long as control is maintained. That society is control. That society is more important than morality. And here we have an example of that. Society says, we must control this situation. Even though the situation has not yet been determined to be a criminal event, we still must control the situation. And we do that by locking up teenagers in 6 by 8 foot cells for 23 hours a day. So tell me, everyone watching this video, how long do you think you could stay sane in an 8 foot by 6 foot cell 23 hours a day with nothing to do? Just you. Your thoughts. How long? A week? 2? Maybe a couple of months before you started to hallucinate? Could you go 300 days? Almost a year? Do you think maybe that isn't a healthy place for teenagers to be, whether they're guilty of a crime or not? That if you want to rehabilitate those teenagers into functioning adults in the society, that maybe, just maybe, sticking them in a cell for 23 hours a day a 6 foot by 8 foot size cell, may not be the best choice. Do you think maybe we should treat them more humanely? Maybe we should make sure that we show our humanity. That empathy, sympathy, and compassion are considerably more important than control.